Fire everybody. While the list of fired college football coaches grows, frustrated Tennessee fans pondered what a spin on that carousel would be like after the Alabama game. Fire Josh Heupel? Not really, at least not for now, but maybe one day. Fire coordinators? Yes, but which one? Maybe both. Fire position coaches? Absolutely. Even if we don't remember their names. Welcome to the Volunteer State. I'm Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, along with John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. On this episode, we're going to discuss why UT fans won't change once again on Josh Heupel's staff, although that would be change for the first time. After a frustrating loss at Alabama, we'll talk about whether or not that's even fair to want that and whether those fans will get what they want ultimately. And by the way, why fans of all teams tend to go to this fire a coach solution to every problem? John, I'll answer. Actually, I'll answer that last question off the top. When fans go to the fire everybody, and there's some hyperbole in that, I know, but just the fire this coach, fire that coach. When they go to that approach, I think it's out of helplessness or a sense of helplessness, right? They want something fixed. They're angry that a game didn't go their way. They're angry at penalties. They're angry at a bad play call, which we'll get into very shortly. And they want action. And they can't go to practice and yell at players for making a mistake. They can't make the correct play call. They want action, and sometimes the only action is I want somebody fired. I want somebody to pay. Sometimes their action is accountability. Which is why sometimes before press conferences, I get and other beat writers get the message from fans that says, "Ask the tough questions," right? Make them make them answer for what they did. And so fans want action, and so that's where the idea of firing people comes into. So that's sort of going to be our topic today. It's maybe lighthearted, maybe not necessarily right with where we're at going to the Kentucky game, but I think it's pretty timely coming out of the Alabama game. And fans just realize we're not laughing at you. We're not even laughing with you. We're sort of laughing to the side of you at how silly sometimes these situations can get. But there's every reason for Tennessee fans to be very angry at how the Alabama game went. So, John, my inbox was full after the Alabama game. I'm sure yours was as well. How high was the fire everybody meter over the weekend, and who specifically was it fixated on? Who needed to be fired the most?
Perhaps my emailers weren't as irate as yours were. I didn't get. Let's see. I only got two fire everybody's.
Okay.
One was from my wife's uncle. It was a text message during the game. He's quick to express his frustration according to how a game is going. What's interesting about this is I have a few emailers, readers who they don't hold back and they don't wait. I've actually had people email me after a bad opening possession for Tennessee.
I get a few of those. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a doomsday scenario. We're horrible. This offense doesn't work. Josh Heupel will never make it here, blah, blah, blah. And so all of this is a great example of how much Tennessee football matters. And it's not the only place where it matters so much. We get a lot of that in the SEC. I've been other places, covered other teams. I know what it's like. It means so much. And there's so much emotion invested in it. I think losing your bet, losing money is a greater factor now than it used to be because more people bet. They just bet on their phone. We've talked about that before. But this is deeper than that. This is so passionate and just so intense. Oh my God, not again. We're losing to Alabama. No. And so it's just a very strong guttural reaction to what happened. And because it's not as though they need to sit down and write a letter and
Yeah.
express their despair. They can do it right then. Boom, sit.
I got I didn't get a fire Josh Heupel emails necessarily. I got this guy isn't the guy emails, and
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
I know you got some that said this guy's
Sure.
Butch Jones, which means he can get the job done to a certain degree, but then it's going to run out. The clock's going to run out on him. I got the James Franklin comparisons, the Mark Richt comparisons, which is I mean those are better coaches than Butch Jones, but it's sort of the same idea. It's guys that hit a ceiling, and I always thought it was interesting with the James Franklin comparison. James Franklin was fired from Penn State recently, and this was I think it's like his 15th season. He had like 5 or 6 top 10 teams. He went to the playoff. He was in the national title mix a couple of times, but never quite got there. Um, in the moment of a lot of games during his tenure, I'm sure Penn State fans enjoyed that success. But if you had told them on the day that James Franklin was hired, this guy is not going to win a national championship, they 100% would have said, "Well, look, why are we getting him?" And I think that's sort of the funny thing is that if you tell people right now Josh Heupel will not win a national championship, whether he's here another 2 years or 20 years, he's not going to win a national championship. I mean, I guess any fan would say, well, then why is he here? Fire him. But that's not realistic, right? I mean, there's very, very, very few coaches that win national titles. Now, granted, Tennessee is one of those programs that can win one. And so I think that's why that standard is there. It's just a funny thing that that's whether or not you can get to that pinnacle is sort of determines whether or not this is even worth it to keep the guy. You know, but I got a lot of Josh Heupel frustrations over Josh Heupel. I did get the calls from fire Tim Banks, which defense is playing poorly right now. Little bit of Joey Halsley. It got down to position coaches. I always think that's more comical when it gets down to Willie Martinez and Glenn Ellerby and Kelsey Pope, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But I mean, the big frustrations over Josh Heupel and thinking that he either needs help or he's not getting the job done to the extent that he needs to. I mean, almost all those emails that I got was at halftime of the Alabama game, and we know exactly why that was. That was because of how the first half ended. And John, I wrote, and this is why I think my inbox was fuller than yours on these sort of things, because I did write a what we call a beat column after the game that said Josh Heupel was to blame. He made the biggest mistake in that game in the personnel on that play call there. And John, 100% of what you write is opinion. Me as a beat writer, I usually don't write opinion pieces, but every once in a while I'm called upon to do one of those, and we call those beat columns. And so that was about as hard as a hit as I usually deliver in the objective, just write the facts, beat reporter role. But I absolutely thought that he was at fault the most for that play. John, I actually haven't even discussed that play with you, and it's been quite a discussion this week. Who do you think was to blame for the 99-yard pick six at the end of the first half?
Well, I think ultimately things like that fall on the head coach. Um, it always bugs me in a game when a team is in a passing situation late in a game. It's trying to come from behind. It's in desperation mode, 2-minute offense, whatever you want to call it. Time running out, and they fake a handoff. But I mean, what's the point of play action? Who would bite on a handoff in that situation? Now, it is possible, I guess, you could hand him off and hand it off and think a guy might run 50 yards for a touchdown. But no, just drop back and throw it because the defense won't won't take the bet. They won't see that potential that fake handoff won't slow anybody down. It will be ignored. And this was kind of that, perhaps in a I don't know, in a more of a spotlight because of the situation. I wouldn't have had a problem if Tennessee would have run the ball.
Really?
No. You got one shot, and Alabama hasn't had a good run defense this year. And maybe that's just an overall assessment of the game. I thought Tennessee should have tried harder to run the ball because I think Alabama is vulnerable to that sometimes. But anyway, so I wouldn't have been, but it was when it lined up in a run formation. Alabama's not buying that. It was convinced that Tennessee was going to throw the ball. So it didn't work out, but it wasn't just that it didn't work out. It was a worst case scenario. I remember a Tennessee Georgia game one time. I think it was at Neyland Stadium where Tennessee fumbled a handoff near the goal line. Sean Jones of Georgia picked it up and ran however many 85, 90 yards, whatever, for a touchdown. And it was that kind of play. It's just a back-breaking play where you're just on the verge of scoring, and now the other guy's scoring. And suddenly the game just shifted right there. Really, that was the game. That play was the game. So, yeah. But Alabama didn't buy a potential run. It never invested. You could see the DB just had his eyes focused solely on the quarterback, Joey Aguilar.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a back and forth with Josh Heupel after the game where I asked him, was that not too predictable that you would throw the ball there? Ask him if that play call was not telegraphed. And by the way, I mean, Josh Heupel, give him credit. He did answer the questions. I mean, that's his job. But on Monday, after the press conference, he had a little bit of fun with some of the criticism he got at the end of each press conference. Josh Heupel always says to the reporters, thanks for coming or whatever. You guys have a great day. This time he smirked a little bit at the end of it and said, I'm not going to say thanks for coming, but have a great day. So he was sort of in the wink, wink. You guys ripped me over the weekend, and I saw it. But have a great day nonetheless. But I had a back and forth with him after the game at the press conference, questioning him because the personnel grouping. It's just the personnel that they put out there was supposed to fool Alabama, I guess, and there was no fooling Alabama. Here's the thing. So Tennessee came out in its heavy run package, with 2 defensive linemen were on the field as blocking backs and 2 tight ends, and then Deshaun Bishop in the backfield. So you had 3 backs in the backfield. A couple of guys are defensive linemen, so you're not going to throw the ball to them. You had 2 tight ends on the field. Jack Van Dorselaer is a freshman. The other was Miles Kitselman. Miles Kitselman was going to be the obvious receiving target on that. Van Dorselaer never even got off of he got jammed and didn't have a chance to get open in the end zone. But the setup to the play is that you run out there in that. You're on the 1-yard line. There's 9 seconds left. There's no timeouts. Everybody in the stadium knew that was going to be a pass because you're not going to run. It would be a huge risk. You're not going to run. You said you would be fine running it. I just don't think. I think Josh Heupel is a little too risk averse to do that. Because if you run it there and you don't get it, it's as grave of as an error as they had anyway. Because you come away with no points. So they were going to throw the ball. When they come out in that package, you could tell Alabama wanted. They then called a timeout. You could tell that Alabama's coach's intent with that is to remind their players, listen, this is a heavy package. We understand that the personnel they have in looks like they're going to run. We're just letting you guys know that there's 9 seconds left and no timeout, so they're going to pass. I know all week we worked on this. When you see this package, this is a heavy run package, but not in this situation. On the flip side of that, I'm sure Tennessee repped that all week, probably repped it for the last few weeks, and every time they did that, they said, "Hey, we're going to catch somebody on this. This is a heavy run package. We've shown it a few times. But we're going to throw a little play action pass to the tight end coming out of the backfield, the H back, and it's going to work. It's going to work on 4th and 1. It's going to work on 3rd and 1. It's going to work. And you know what? It's a good wrinkle with that personnel package. It's a good wrinkle to the run play. It's a good wrinkle to the play action. All that makes sense. But you probably didn't rep it with 9 seconds left and no timeouts. You probably didn't rep it in a obvious passing situation, because why would you ever have that personnel on the field in an obvious passing situation? You wouldn't. So it was 1 out of a million that they were set up in that way. But after they called the timeout, Alabama, I thought Tennessee should have said, this they've caught us. They figured it out. They know we're not going to run here. We're going to throw. And then when you come out there to throw the ball, there's only really one receiver you're going to throw to. There's very few routes. If it's going to be a flat route to that side. So, John, I usually don't question coaches in that way. I just thought it was so predictable. And I'll tell you, in the press box in Tuscaloosa, the word play action, the phrase play action was said about 100 times before that play. So when you get the nerdy sports writers seeing it, you got to think that Kalen DeBoer and his staff are going to see it. Because, I mean, to each of us, we were looking at each other and said, I said it. I said, this is play action. Why are they this is not fooling anybody. This is play action. It has to be play action. They have to throw the ball. Why do they have this personnel out there? And then when the timeout happened, we all said, okay, well, they're going to switch that up. And then they came out in the same personnel. And again, we all said, this has to be play action. And it was. So if Joey Aguilar makes that throw exactly where he needs to, it's probably a touchdown. But if he hits him in the body, it's probably an incomplete pass. If it's behind him, it's picked off, which it was. I just thought that Josh Heupel did not put his players in the best situation to succeed there, and that's an old coach's line. If Aguilar hits that throw, it's a touchdown. But it was there. I thought there was dozens of other plays and personnel groupings they could have used to do that. So I think any criticism of Josh Heupel is completely fair. John, a lot of what I got after this game was also, when is Josh Heupel going to learn better time management? When is he going to teach his players how to tackle? And when is he going to cut out these penalties? Poor tackling is not Josh Heupel's forte. Teaching tackling, that's not his side of the ball. Time management, he can work on. Penalties, every team he's ever had as a head coach has been highly penalized. It's just not going to change. It's just not going to change. Was Heupel's time management better in this game, John? I don't know. Maybe at the end of the first half, it wasn't very good, right? And how he used his timeouts.
No, and you bring that up, or your emailers did. The fans noticed this. What we see happening now is a fan base building a case. I think. I mean, you have the Georgia game where the time management was poor, the Mississippi State game, a questionable play calling. Now you have this, what most people perceive as a boneheaded call to end the first half, and that narrative. We're talking about a coach who is an offensive coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's his area of expertise, and yet they see a problem with all this. Now, granted, the defense is porous, and they can't blame him for that. They shouldn't blame him for tackling. I don't know if you can blame a coordinator necessarily for tackling. That can be an individual act. But I just think with Josh Heupel, what you're seeing, the narrative is kind of what you had with James Franklin. James Franklin was there longer, won more. James Franklin against Oregon went into overtime with Oregon with possibly first place in the top 25 polls, hanging in the balance, and he lost that game.
Yeah.
Then he lost a couple of more in a row, close games. And just like that, he goes from being number one in the country, possibly, to being fired. I mean, that shows how rapidly things can change and how quickly somebody can go. It's almost as though James Franklin bypassed the infamous hot seat. He went from playing for number one to you're out of here.
I hadn't thought about that phrase of building a case. I think that resonates some. Now, just to be clear, neither of us think that Josh Heupel is on the hot seat or anywhere close to the hot seat. He's Tennessee's in the winningest period it's had since its national championship run in the late '90s. Um, he's the most successful coach Tennessee's had since Phil Fulmer. So things are in a good place, but they are. Tennessee is not in the cream of the crop elite national title contenders. They are a notch below that, in the grouping below that, I would say, in the contenders to maybe make the playoff, but maybe miss out on the playoff, which is a good place to be, but you want to be higher than that. And so again, it comes back to that question: has Josh Heupel hit a ceiling or not? We don't know. We'll see. But building the case, yeah, I mean, I think that's where those two conversations converge, because I think a lot of people are now looking the things that they perceive as Josh Heupel's weaknesses. They are looking for those things to happen in games like this. You come into that game saying Josh Heupel has poor time management, and he's bad in 2-minute situations and those kinds of things. So when you see some of those things happen and some of those things get close to happening, I think it reinforces what you were already looking for. Um, I don't know that there's an easy solution to that. Joey Halsley, the offensive coordinator, is up in the booth. There's also like 10 other guys in the booth. Josh Heupel, I still think calls some plays, but not all plays. Who knows this year exactly how that's divvied up, but he's a big part of the play calling still. I don't know who the voice needs to be in his ear to help him out on some decisions. If there was one, I thought that voice would have spoken up in that goal line situation. To look at it from a defensive perspective, again, hey, how does Alabama see this? Alabama sees this as a passing situation, and we have a run heavy personnel package in the game. They know we're going to throw. So somebody needs to speak up and say maybe we need to change it up. Um, so maybe Josh Heupel needs a different voice in his ear in that way. Um, but the easy fix to this, I think, for a lot of people is just change up the staff. Um, John, I was thinking through like some of the arguments for changing staff members, and see if you can find a theme here, because I've had this conversation with Tennessee fans the last few days. When fans say fire Tim Banks, I say, well, he had a top 10 defense last year. And they would say, well, that pass rush didn't show up at Georgia last year, and it didn't show up at Alabama here. Okay, so that means his defense is really good, except against elite teams in those situations. Uh, Fans have said, well, fire the offensive line coach, Glenn Ellerby. And I would say, well, his offensive line has been up for the Joe Moore Award almost every year, which is one of the top offensive lines in the country. And they'll say, yeah, except for this Bama game or that game over here. Um, they say fire Willie Martinez, and I would say, well, he developed Jermod McCoy last year and Colton Hood this year. That's two of the best wins of the transfer portal anybody's got on the resume in the last 2 years. And they'll say, yeah, but his secondary was terrible against Georgia and Alabama. Kelsey Pope, same thing. Really good wide receivers, didn't quite show up as much as they need to in those big games. All these have the same theme, which is the same theme that Josh Heupel has. Yeah, he's really good, except against these elite teams. Um, I mean, John? What should we take from that? Is it just all the same, or are these guys getting criticized for what's laid on their head coach's shoulders?
I think it's virtually impossible for somebody in our situation or even fans to figure out how much of this is due to position coaches being incompetent. I think that's impossible. You could have the greatest position coach in the world, and the player's just not good enough, or the player's not following instruction. So I have a very hard time saying, "Oh, that the position coach is no good. You need to get rid of him." That's still it's easier with the head coach because the head coach is responsible for everything. Uh, as you describe this in the fan reaction, the thought that sticks with me, and I'm not sure coaches fully grasp this. At schools like Tennessee, at Auburn, at LSU, Florida, Georgia and Alabama, of course, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, they want to hold up the number one finger.
Yeah.
They want to chant, "We're number one." That means more. They don't want to pair. Look, if you don't win enough games, you're a loser. If you don't win the big games, well, you're not elite and you're never going to be the big game coach. As you said earlier, if you tell fans, "Oh, this coach is really good, but no, he'll never win a national title here," then they're like, "Well, what good is he? Let's get somebody else." Because that's what they want at the end of a season. They want to be able to say, "We're number one." And maybe that's unrealistic. Tennessee won a national championship in 1951. Some people would be surprised to know I wasn't here for that one,
Hmm.
but I wasn't. I was 3 years old. They won again in 1998, 47 years later. Okay. So if you win one every 47 years, 2045, is that the magic date? I'm just saying that's the reality, but that's not how fans look at it. And I really think the era we're in now increases that with everybody, with all fan bases, because they look at NIL and they look at Texas Tech, where the head of the Board of Regents, Cody Campbell's also Texas Tech's biggest booster, and he's a billionaire, and he'll do everything he can to win a national title there. Okay. And it's that way at other places. All of a sudden, Indiana is in the national championship uh, conversation. Hiring Kirk Signetti a few years ago from James Madison. Fans see this happening elsewhere, and that bothers them as much as anything. Well, if it can happen there, why can't it happen here? You look at Tennessee with a huge stadium, a huge passionate fan base, plenty NIL money, tradition, winning football games matters so much. It's such a historical program, but they want to win one now. They want to win. They don't want to keep talking about national championship was 27 years ago. That's not they want, and they don't want a coach who can't win the national championship. And that's what they're. We're not talking about Josh Heupel being on the hot seat. We're talking about a fan base that's coming to the conclusion that you can't win a championship with this guy.
Hmm.
That he's not good enough to win a championship. Might win a lot of games, be a lot better than Butch Jones was, certainly better than Jeremy Pruitt, uh, Vince Dooley, Derek Dooley. He wasn't better than Vince. But all that, but see, they want to win it all. And they see other people winning it all or having it looking like they can win it all.
And Josh Heupel, his success, I think, gives enough hope to think that's
Yes. Yeah.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
hope, and that kind of hope, I think, is what is torturous to some Tennessee fans when they lose a game like
Sure.
Alabama, because I mean, we were on the same podcast a week ago saying we could see Tennessee winning that game, but we don't think they will. Um, and or preseason picks, I remember I picked Tennessee to have 2 losses to this point in the year. They were going to lose to Georgia in a close one, and they were going to lose at Alabama. So I got asked in my mailbag this week, why is it Tennessee is falling so short of expectations? I said, well, it depends on what your expectations were. Mine were that they would lose 2 to this point, and they've lost 2. So and that's people people get into a season. You in the preseason, you can say, boy, this Joey Aguilar, I don't know if he can play at this level. There's issues with wide receiver depth. The offensive line is rebuilt. The defense has got some holes in it. I don't know. This may be an 8-4 team, and then you see things work out for a couple of games, and Joey Aguilar is the guy, and a lot of these questions have been answered, and you think, well, this is an 11-1 team, and so they're probably going to go beat Alabama. So expectations change so much during the year. The more hope you give a fan base, the more that they expect. And you're talking about how things can fall off a cliff with a coach. They can rise just as sharply if you give fans some hope that the pretty good season is going to turn into a great season. And I think that's one thing that's happened a little bit with Tennessee, where fans thought they had a better chance of beating Alabama than they did, and they did have a chance. But they gave it away. And John, that sort of brings us to where we are in the year right now. I was looking at the ESPN playoff predictor. Let me give you a couple of percentages here and see if you can understand and make sense of these. Tennessee, according to the ESPN playoff predictor, Tennessee has an 18% chance to make the playoff. 18% chance. But, and you can go game by game here and plug these in, but if Tennessee wins its last 5 games, it has a 90% chance of making the playoff. So, in other words, if Tennessee runs the table, the playoff predictor says, yeah, they're in for sure. A pretty good chance they're going to host. But 18% chance overall, which is just to say that the ESPN playoff predictor thinks Tennessee will lose a game at least. And, that could be any of these, but it could be probably Oklahoma or Florida or Vandy. So, John, do you align with those percentages? Because I actually think Tennessee has a better than 18% chance of running the table. Let's start with that number. Do you give Tennessee a better chance to run the table than 18%?
Yes, I do. I think Tennessee could be favored in its last 5 games. So, yeah, I don't
But
agree with the 18%. I don't know if I can put a percentile on it, but it's a better than an 18% chance, I would say.
which, by the way, the ESPN playoff predictor again, if you look at each game, they make Tennessee a slight favorite in all those games that I just mentioned: Oklahoma, Vandy, Florida. So again, you're thinking if they're a favorite in every game, why is the predictor predict that they'll lose one? Because they're just saying they're a slight favorite and they're going to blow it in one of those. And I think Tennessee fans sometimes can think that way too, especially the Florida game. That's the one that people would circle, I would guess. But it's a week to week thing, I know, with the team, with coaches and players and all that. But I think there's a reasonable chance. I mean, I think they'll beat Kentucky this week. Josh Heupel's 4-0 against Kentucky. He's had a couple close ones, but he's got Kentucky's number. I think this team is itching for an offensive outburst. Kentucky is not terrible. They played Ole Miss close. They should have beat Texas last week. So you have to play well to win this game. But I think they'll beat Kentucky. I think they'll put up a lot of points. Oklahoma could be really fun. Florida could be it could be a lot of anxiety going down to Florida, depending on what's on the line. And then if you get to the Vandy game, we'll just see. Who knows? That may be a playoff play-in game. But I mean, of those left over, John, if I tell you they're going to lose one of them, which one is it?
Vanderbilt.
Really, Vandy?
Yes.
Why do you say Vanderbilt?
Well, uh, in all the years I've been aware of Vanderbilt football, I pretty much had the same take on it every time. If it opened the season with 3 wins in non-conference play, and I heard people saying this Vandy's turned the corner, this is a different Vanderbilt. I've heard that a lot in the past. I would laugh No, it'll be the same old Vanderbilt. Now I'm the person saying this is a different Vanderbilt team. Last year, I thought it was Diego Pavia, the quarterback transfer from New Mexico State, who raised that entire program, who brought an attitude, an energy, experience to the table, and and it won 7 games. That's supposed to be the ceiling for Vanderbilt. This team is much better. It's very disciplined. It looks well coached. Pavia is he's a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Yeah, he really is.
He really is. Okay, all of that, but what really cemented my opinion of Vanderbilt was watching the LSU game. It was a noon game. I wasn't watching anything else. I wasn't switching back and forth like I usually do. Was watching the game, and the way Vanderbilt physically beat LSU at the line of scrimmage, play after play after play. It was just better. It was more physical. It beat quarterback Garrett Nussmeier to death. He was hit on every pass he threw, just about. I just think Vanderbilt has everything. I think it's a better team than Oklahoma. Now, games may prove me wrong, but Oklahoma has an awesome defense. But I like Vanderbilt's offense much better. I think that offense is with a lot of option stuff in it, a lot of motion, a lot just very well conceived and well executed. And it's not a typical SEC offense. It's troubling for opposing teams. LSU has a really good defense. Defense hasn't been its problem all year. Loaded up in the transfer portal. It's given up 102 yards a game rushing now. 239 yards is how much Vanderbilt rushed for against LSU. Nobody's run the ball like that on LSU. So I think Vanderbilt right now, if the quarterback stays healthy, playing Tennessee with the breakdowns Tennessee has in the secondary, can hit big plays. But I also think Vanderbilt can line up and control the ball, eat clock, and keep Tennessee's offense off the field. So that to me, I'm not saying Tennessee can't win the game, and I think it'll be favored, but I'm just saying you gave me my choice. Which one would I be more concerned about? It would be Vanderbilt, and never said that one before.
Yeah, and I ask you that question not knowing the answer, and I'm not sure if I know my answer. You're making a good case for Vandy in that question. Um,
Well, you covered Vanderbilt football for a while.
yeah, I covered them for 7 seasons, all under Derek Mason. I covered Tennessee winning. I don't know. I mean, Vanderbilt beating Tennessee probably 3 times. I think 3 straight, if I remember right. Um, Vandy had a passing game during a couple of those. Quarterback named Kyle Shermer lit up Tennessee
Sure.
a couple years. But it always seemed like those Vandy teams, with the exception of a couple of those passing performances, just overall, it always seemed like those Vandy teams were more like survive a game to win. Try to neutralize their opponent because they were not as talented. Maybe they had a better plan. You just always were a little surprised when they would beat an SEC team not named Mississippi State or Kentucky. That's not the case with this Vandy team. Yeah, you're right. This Vandy team dictates the game more to opponents. They have more talent. They've done well in the portal. I'll be very curious next year to see what Vandy looks like after Diego Pavia, like what the plan is there to sort of have that attitude and all that. But who knows? Pavia may play another 10 years. We don't know. Depends on what the
he
courts say.
he may never leave.
Yeah, he may not. But yeah, of the ones that Tennessee has left, you make a good case for Vandy. Now, I would say Tennessee fans would love to get to that game and playoffs still be on the line because you would lock your chances at Neyland on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, saying you have to beat Vanderbilt and you're in the playoff. Which, by the way, that would probably there's a decent chance that would be a winner goes to the playoff, loser goes to a second tier bowl. Um, but Tennessee would take that 10 times out of 10. I mean, Oklahoma's defense. I still believe in their defense. They do have John Mateer. He'll get healthier each week. That one's also at Neyland. I mean, I feel like Florida. It feels like the jinx game, but boy, I don't know what they're going to be now after Billy Napier. I don't know if they'll be better because sometimes when you're under an interim coach, you're just you have nothing to lose, and so that takes the pressure off, and you just play better. And Florida would get up for Tennessee no matter when it was or who the coach was, or maybe they're worse because they don't know who their coach is going to be. They're waiting for the transfer portal to open so they can just get out of there, or the season to end so they can get out of there in the transfer portal. So I don't know what kind of team Tennessee will face in Florida, but I will say in singular games, I would pick, just if you're picking them one at a time, I would pick Tennessee to beat Kentucky, to beat Oklahoma, to beat, was it New Mexico State and Florida and Vandy. If you ask me, will they win all five individually? They will each week.
Yeah.
But what's the chances of winning all five? It's better than 18%. I think I'd probably be more in the 50-50 range because I think this offense will be able to score on every one of those teams and score enough to win. Will the defense be able to stop all those teams? That's a much bigger question. Um, John, let's wrap up with a little Kentucky. What's your concern for Tennessee going to Lexington against a Kentucky team that has not beat an SEC team yet, but has gotten close a couple times at home?
Yeah, been watching this Kentucky-Tennessee rivalry for a long time, and year in and year out, in my opinion, even more so than Tennessee versus Vanderbilt, has always been, oh, that's the one game I'm surest of on the schedule every year. It's just the history of it.
Mm-hmm.
Tennessee's won 37 out of the last 40 games in the series. And what's interesting to me about that series is some of the times I thought Kentucky had the better team. It just is kind of like Tennessee going to the swamp and losing to Florida. Kentucky just found ways. It was very creative in finding ways to lose. It's getting ready to kick a chip shot field goal. No, off to the right or off to the left. It's down in the 1 yard line and it thinks, no, let's just kick it and tie it. No, go for it and try and win the game. Now, there's always something that goes wrong for Kentucky in that game. So that's the one game, other than New Mexico, of course, New Mexico State, that I'm surest of. However, it played really good defense against Texas, which has had offensive struggles all year. And another thing about it, it's sometimes I've seen it run the ball some. I mean, it's been effective running the ball. And Tennessee's defense, I think this game is the best thing that could happen to Tennessee's defense because I just don't think Kentucky has the offensive wherewithal to handle that. But at the same time, when I look at that's my first response, but my other one, I just look at what the SEC has become. It's become anybody that can win. You had Texas, the preseason #1 in the SEC, a national championship contender with all that talent, all that NIL money. And it goes into overtime to beat Kentucky. And Kentucky was pretty much regarded as the worst team in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
They still be, but it almost beat Texas, and the yardage was very much in Kentucky's favor. So it wasn't like a freak close game. It was Kentucky blew the game really. So I still like Tennessee's chances at Kentucky. If all goes wrong for Tennessee, Kentucky will still find a way to lose.
Yeah, I don't know if Josh Heupel's biggest challenge this week is time management or anything like that. I think it's probably his biggest challenge is to make sure his team is 100% focused going to Lexington. It's a road game. They've had their issues on the road, but not against unranked teams necessarily. Um, I've had some pushback with a story that I did a few weeks ago about the truth of Josh Heupel's road record, which in the SEC is 8-10. That's not good. It's actually better than most SEC coaches. But within that 8-10, he's 3-7 against top 25 SEC teams. He's 5-3 against unranked SEC teams on the road. So playing bad teams, he's usually pretty good. He's certainly over 500. This is another one of those games where they should win. You just have to be focused. You have to have a good plan. You can't take Kentucky for granted. And I agree with you. This is a good game for Tennessee's defense because Kentucky has not shown that it has the firepower that that Alabama had, obviously, but that others have had, and so Tennessee should be able to pin its ears back and get to the quarterback. It's not going to face as good skill positions, so tackling should be better. On offense, Kentucky's shown some life, but yeah, I mean, they held Texas down last week, but Arch Manning is about the worst starting quarterback in the SEC right now. And Texas is not good on offense. So I don't know if Kentucky can hang its hat on that as much. I just maybe this is a gut feel. I think Tennessee's going to put up 40. And I think defense is going to put up. Defense is going to have a pretty good, not great, but pretty good day. I think Tennessee's going to win by a couple of scores, a couple of touchdowns in this one. Get back on track, and then the playoff talk starts to rev back up for the Oklahoma game. But yeah, you mentioned it. I mean, it's each week. Who knows? I looked at it earlier today of the playoff contenders in the SEC. And there's I think there's like 8 of them or something. Between all those teams, there are 14 head-to-head games left of playoff contenders in the SEC. So each week we'll be able to see, like for example, Oklahoma Ole Miss this week. Oklahoma could get knocked out. Ole Miss could have its chances lessened with a loss. But with Tennessee, it's just if you lose, you're out. If you win, you're still in, and it's as simple as that. And those percentages each week that Tennessee wins, its percentages will go much higher, certainly higher than 18%. And because of all those head-to-head matchups, Tennessee can leapfrog some other teams because its schedule is softer than some others. That being said, Vandy and Oklahoma, I think, are like number 11 and 12 in the coaches poll. So, John, it is funny in the preseason, we said they would have a soft stretch here, and they won't have a chance for signature wins, right? You got to have some signature wins with your wins total. Well, Oklahoma would still be a signature win right now, and Vanderbilt that could be the one that if Tennessee were 10-2 on selection Sunday or whatever it is, they would say, "Hey, but we beat Vanderbilt," and as we all know, Vanderbilt is an elite team. And isn't that crazy how that talk would go? You would count Vanderbilt as a signature win on your playoff resume if you get that far.
Very much so. And I just think when you look ahead and at the possible scenario that could unfold, the idea of Tennessee and Vanderbilt playing in Neyland Stadium with a playoff bid on the line is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in all my years of following college football. It's not amazing when I watch Vanderbilt now, but just going back to image and history, if you would have told me 3 years ago that in 2025, Tennessee and Vanderbilt would meet in a play-in game for the college football playoff, I wouldn't have been able to stop laughing.
Well, that's far down the road, and Tennessee's got to beat Kentucky this Saturday. I'll be up there in Lexington at Kroger Field to see if they can get that done, refocus, and get back on track coming off the Alabama loss. Follow our coverage of the Vols in that game and much more at KnoxNews.com. Share this podcast with your fellow UT fans. We'd love for you to also subscribe just to make sure you never miss one of our episodes. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Volunteer State.